Alright, just making a quick random video of something that I found with the help from tips from such luminaries as J-Mania and research through the internet that I found at Food Basics. Here is, we have Hostess Chips. Now, a lot of you who are watching this may realize how important this is. This is amazing. These are Hostess Chips. As you may know, I'm a fan of digging into history from my videos. You may have realized that. Doing some random historical research. A lot of it very useless, but very useful for things like my video. And of course, one of the things I enjoy the most, and which gives me such pride and joy in this life of mine, is doing research, historical research on fast food and fast food culture, American fast food culture. And in this case, this is a Canadian fast food culture. I didn't realize Hostess was Canadian, but apparently it is. I thought there was some in the States, but I guess not. Just to go through a little bit of the history of Hostess. Hostess was like, throughout, like, I don't know if it started in the 70s, I don't know when it started exactly, but throughout most of the 80s, all of the 80s, and most of the 90s, so the early 90s, Hostess was the big Canadian chip brand in Canada. Before we had Lay's and before Miss Vicky's and all these things came about, Hostess was the main brand. Hostess was popular for introducing a variety of flavors. You could get like, there's only like 6 that exist now, I think, or 5 that exist now. I got the 5 that exist now, so it's regular, barbecue, oh baby, oh yeah, salt and vinegar, sour cream and onion, and barbecue, which might actually be the barbecue flavoring, like the old-fashioned barbecue flavoring, which is something that Lay's has started to promote. They've introduced, instead of their barbecue flavoring, they've introduced the old-fashioned barbecue flavoring, which tasted more like these style of old chips. As you'll notice, like Hostess was important. There's other flavors that aren't introduced. There is like a roasted chicken flavor. There's a pizza flavor. There's, I don't know if I have. Oh, sorry, I forgot one. I probably said this wrong, but did I say, I don't even know. I'm so fucking tired. My mind's losing it. Whatever. Ketchup instead of barbecue. Maybe I mixed those up. Ketchup. There's that. There was a pizza flavor. As you'll notice, Hostess was kind of infamous for not only introducing these little goblin-like creatures in their advertising, but also infamous for like doing color coding. You know, like the blue represented the regular and the orange represented the barbecue. The red is the ketchup. The semi-yellow orangish is the salt and vinegar, and blah blah blah. You had the sour cream and onion, which was green. Dill pickle, which they don't have, I don't know why. Dill pickle was like a darker green. So yeah, they were special for the Canadian market in the 80s for introducing these types of things. It started a branding sort of idea, and I guess it helped them in promoting. And those little, I guess I read up that those little goblin creatures would show up as mascots and give like free Hostess chips to people at various locations like grocery stores and all that. So yeah, kind of a rundown more on the history. There's throughout the 80s they existed. Apparently at some point in the 80s they introduced, on top of like I think they only had like 3 basic flavors, like barbecue, regular, and sour cream or something, or salt and vinegar. But then they decided to introduce like grape, orange, and something else, and it failed miserably, like fruit flavored chips. At first when I read this, I thought it was like, because I read orange first, and I thought it was just like the coloring of the labels like I was mentioning. But I guess it was actually like fruit flavored chips or something. So that failed miserably. I think this was around 1987. And then what happened was they started introducing other flavors like the dill pickle and all that. And then those became a hit, and Hostess sort of regained a lot of its brand image. Eventually, U.S. competitors were trying to gain market ground in the States, or in Canada, and were trying to push Hostess out of its place, but Hostess somehow maintained a stronghold on the chip market, which is really cool because it brings back a lot of memories for us, like 80s kids or 80s kids that lived throughout the early 90s. Well, and lived, unless we died. Yeah, so another thing that's kind of important to mention is the death of Hostess. The death of Hostess, even though they still exist, happened in the mid-90s. Somewhere in the early 90s, Hostess was like deteriorating because of competition and probably just a general lack of the brand was failing somehow. And so Hostess was bought by PepsiCo. PepsiCo owns Frito-Lay, and they also own such delicious things as the Yum brand, or I think it's Yum brand, the Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC things. So yeah, they own Frito-Lay. That's why you frequently see Lay's and Pepsi products together. So they bought them, but Lay's existed in the States as a chip that we know now, Lay's. They existed in the States in the past, but with their deal with Hostess, they somehow they came to agreement to maintain the Hostess brand because it represented, it was kind of like a Canadian cultural icon. I mean, I don't really care about all that shit, but when it comes to fast food, hell fucking yes I care. Fuck yeah. Fucking great shit. So, Lay's bought Hostess and maintained the brand. Another thing that's really kind of synonymous with Hostess in the 80s and the early 90s was, I don't really know, I'm sure I've had tons of the bigger bag like this of the Hostess, while playing Street Fighter and fucking enjoying, DJ's fucking level in Super Street Fighter 2, on the Super NES. But I really remember Hostess, going to buy at Russell Road Confectionery. There's another fucking Street Fighter link. That's another fucking link with Russell right there. Hostess and Russell going to the fucking confectionery, buying the small bags of Lay's. And what I'm trying to get at, this whole point is fucking long because I'm fucking rambling, is the prizes you would get. This is J-Mania mentioned this also. You would get inside the bag, the small bag. I don't know if it was in the big bag. It was probably in the big bag too. You'd get a little wrap that was sealed up, and it would either be stickers or it was a contest or something, sort of the Monopoly thing, or how there used to be Coke under the cap stuff. You'd win a free Coke. In this case, you'd win a free bag of Hostess or another prize, or maybe there was a $10,000 prize or whatever contest going out through Canada. While I was doing research on it, I was kind of refreshed. I'm not a big wrestling fan, but there was a big WWF sticker thing that you'd find in the bags or whatever. So things like that, maybe cartoon tie-ins. Yeah, I mean, fucking, I don't even know what I'm fucking saying. I'm just fucking going crazy here. But it's about fast food, so who gives a fuck? So it's the fucking light's buzzing. Yeah. So the brand started to kind of lose ground, as I said, because Pringles were coming along. I remember when Pringles were introduced in Canada. That kind of hurt the Hostess brand, and then other things the Lay's merger, I guess, helped. But I mean, Frito-Lay just wanted to kind of introduce their own thing. So they kept the Hostess, but they also started introducing fucking my love and joy in life, which is Doritos. I mean, I have a lot of love and joys in life, Street Fighter and all that bullshit, like Coke and Taco Bell and Doritos. Doritos is one of them. So they introduced Doritos to Canada, and I kind of remember that because it's it seems that I know Doritos has been around since the 60s, but it seemed like it didn't really exist in Canada until the 90s, and I guess it was only introduced at maybe like the late 80s or the 90s, because I kind of remember it being like a new thing, and I remember the packaging with the stripe and all that, and or it was, no, it wasn't that, but like I remember eventually it was that, and yeah, like I was talking about, there was somebody else, like there was only a couple flavors, like first was the nacho cheese, and then was the Cool Ranch, so it was like a slow entrance into the Canadian market, but fucking thank you for introducing it and changing my life in the most godly way possible. Yeah. So also linked with the Hostess and Frito-Lay merger was apparently Hostess had their own Dorito type chip, a tortilla type chip, which I think was like called taquitos, after the taquitos, obviously. And what I found interesting was apparently their taquitos chip, the way it tastes or the way it was made, was different enough that eventually it became part of the Doritos family and is what we now know today as the Zesty Dorito. So I guess like maybe the recipe was transferred or it was changed a little bit when it became a Dorito, but that is what the Zesty Dorito is. It's definitely not one of my favorite Doritos. It's one of my least favorite Doritos, but you know, it's interesting to know about the history of it, because these little fucking tidbits about fast food history are what really matters in my life and many of your lives. Or if you're just watching this video from like fucking like the random views I get from like Paraguay or whatever, maybe you don't give a fuck, but I mean, you're still learning something. So yeah, that was like the fucking Zesty Dorito history, and they had all their other brands, so shout outs to like the Hostess Lay's merger for that. And then the slow descent of Hostess happens around 1996. This is when I remember that, I remember this very clearly, like Lay's was introduced as like a new thing. So basically Hostess was being eliminated just because of, you know, Lay's was basically the one that was going to win. So it's basically Hostess is Lay's, at least for the Canadian market. And yeah, so it was introduced in 96. And I kind of remember this, like, this whole fucking marketing campaign when Lay's came out. They had, I bet you can't just eat one. And it was to appeal to the Canadian market. There was, you know, hockey players like Mark Messier. He was the big one promoting the Lay's commercials. I bet you can't just eat one. So that's what I remember about the Lay's. And then now you saw less Hostess appearing. You'd see a little bit like the small bags, like I mentioned, at convenience stores. But now it's mostly gone, and it lives on in the memory of people who loved it and ate it. It's like just like sort of like a cultural phenomenon of like when we grew up. If you were born in the 80s and lived in the 90s, as like before you were a teenager or as you were a teenager, you'd fucking buy some fucking Hostess chips, go rent a video game, and like get some Coke or some Tahiti treat or some Mountain Dew, which was also introduced in the 90s. Fuck, I could probably make a video about that. It was also introduced in the 90s. I'm sure it existed. I know it existed in the States since the 60s. But yeah, Mark Messier, all that bullshit. And then I think they got other hockey players to promote it, and Lay's became famous and whatever. It's funny that like I don't very much like I don't give a fuck too much about hockey. Like the only things I know about hockey is either if like I hear somebody talk about it, I'll like kind of pick up some stuff. Like I don't watch hockey, but like I guess like a lot of the only reason I know like some hockey players is because of like the fast food connection. Like Mark Messier was the fucking guy for the Lay's, and like I also know that I only really know about Matt Sundin because the motherfucker did like Big Mac commercials in Canada, so I kind of remember that. But that's all I gotta say about the Hostess. I mean, I talked about a lot of other shit, but really, this was the genesis of the fucking video. So dig into the old memories if you are from Canada. I guess it was only from Canada. So dig into old memories of like Hostess, how much it was godlike to find the little stickers in your fucking bags and all that shit. It'll bring back some memories, maybe it probably won't, I don't give a fuck, but it certainly does for me going to Russell Heights. Just fucking experiencing like Mortal Kombat on your Supra with the sweat. Eating some Hostess or whatever. Enjoying a movie or whatever. That shit rules. So I'm probably going to eat a bag right now. Just to enjoy it and like share this with the rest of the people who are trying to remember this stuff. And thanks for the tips for all, you know, J-Mania, all that. And the research, the other people that I did the research online. All that shit is godlike, man. Hostess, for real. I'm glad it still exists. So yeah, that's it. Goodbye.